Hello there, Force of Will players, and welcome back to another video. I got a lot coming out this week. I've been on vacation, and so unfortunately, as soon as I went on vacation, new set dropped, new ban list dropped, all that good stuff. So I wasn't able to get the content out immediately, but I will be going over all that stuff this week, so do look forward to it. We also have all the new rulers. We'll be doing a deck a week for each one of those, and we'll be continuing with Wanderer Wednesdays as we do every week. But today we're going to be talking about the new ban list or combination ban list. So combination ban lists, actually, if you're not familiar with them, I can show you right here. This is a combination ban list is an idea where if you're playing with X card, you can't play with Y card. So the example they give is if you're playing Welser, the Progenitor of Magic, you can't have in your deck Presea Seeker of Friends, Presea's Big Show. Okay, so that is what a combination ban list is. We got 24 combinations in the new ban list. We also got 3 additional bans, and nothing was unbanned or anything like that. So I'll be talking about each combination. I'll also talk about the 3 individual bans as well. And then just go over each one as it is. A couple things just to get out of the way that I don't like about the combination ban list. I'll start with the don't likes and then I'll say what I like about it. The things I don't like about the combination ban list. One, I think they made too many combinations at once. And there are some instances, we'll kind of get to it when we get to like 10 through 12 here, where I think it would have been better if they had just banned something instead. They can get kind of confusing when you have too many like this. And it can lead to like issues when people are deck building or things like that, right? So that's one of the first things I don't like about there being too many combinations. The other thing, and this isn't directly on the combination ban list itself, this is more just ban list ideology in general, is I don't like it that they hit things that aren't even out yet. So, I mean, they started making combination bans for, like, Null Magic Stones, usually Yang, Whisper from the Abyss Typhon, 2 other Typhon things down here. Like, there's just, like, a lot of that. And some of these things, yes, had to be hit in some form. I'll get into those. Like, I understand that. However, some of the things that... It really sucks when cards come out and you're like, oh, I can't wait to play with this kind of stuff, like, etc., etc. And then a ban list comes out right before the set drops and bans cards from the set, before the set's even technically out. Like, you just never even get to play with them in, like, a competitive environment, which is why I've always, like, liked ban lists that occur midway through, like, set releases. So, like, if you get a set, like, every 3 months, I think it's better to have a ban list every, like, 1.5 to 2 months after those sets are released. Which is kind of what we have. But we get them at the same time as the sets, which I think is really... I think it doesn't keep the game fresh. We don't have, like, a lot of events. Like, we really only get, like, 3, 4, maybe 5 events due to, like, the rising amount of Discord events that we've had in between set releases. But it just does kind of feel bad, again, when you're like, man, I was really looking forward to Typhon, and then suddenly, like, 3 of the combinations for Typhon are hit. You're just like, well, I'm not really looking forward to Typhon anymore. So, like, that kind of idea, right? So those are the negatives. Positives that I like about it. One, it does prevent... it allows you to play with cards just in a non-degenerate fashion, without having to, like, outright ban them. So, like, I mean, like, take, for example, like, Makaria Final Stance. The reason for this one, just, like, straight up, is Makaria dumps Final Stance, and then you use another card to resurrect Final Stance, like the 3-drop Broomhild, right? So you just get quick, easy ways to take extra turns, which may not be, like, you know... conducive to the game strategy. So, like, things like that, and just, like, degenerate combos that could potentially cause problems. So I do like that. It allows you to keep playing with cards. They're not technically banned, you just can't play them with whatever they're more degenerate, broken, powerful with, right? So that is one of the good things about, like, a combination ban list. It kind of, like, opens up different ways to look at it. I think I already mentioned this. I don't like that they made 24 of these. I think this could have been like massively reduced and still be fine. But what this one specifically is really good for is it hit a lot of OTK things, a lot of early game mana cheats, as well as like early game like kind of kill your opponent combo type deals, which is kind of what's been plaguing the game. It slowed the game down quite a bit, in my opinion. And they preemptively hit things, like in the case of Null Magic Stone Zhuge Liang, which was potentially going to be a problem. So I do like that they kind of just went for it. They were like, we want the game to slow down. We don't want these turn 1, turn 2 type deals. We want the game to last to at least turn 3, get some more interaction, have it be more fun and playable, less like a Yu-Gi-Oh type deal, right? Which I really appreciate. Because a mana-based game feels really... it doesn't feel good when you're playing like a mana-based game and you're like, I call 1 resource, and then all of a sudden you're like, I lose! So it's like you're not even really a resource-based game at that point. So anyway, I'll go over each individual one of these, my thoughts on them, why I think they happened, things like that. So starting off, Whisper from the Abyss, Typhon. If you're unfamiliar with Typhon, Typhon is you have to play at least a 100 card deck. You have no maximum deck size. In most cases, Typhon is probably going to be limited to a 200 deck size. It does say you have no maximum deck size on the card, but for tournament ease, as well as like judge ease and things like that, because the upper limit on life that you can gain is capped at 200, a lot of events are probably just going to have Typhon decks capped at 200 cards to make it conducive to the actual tournament environment. But anyway, so Typhon can have anywhere between, let's say, 100 and 200 card decks, and then at 100 cards you'll have 10,000 life, at 200 cards you'll have 20,000 life. So you just have a lot of life. Whisper from the Abyss, right? You pay X amount of life for every 500, you draw a card. So if you're playing like a 200 card Typhon deck, you pay 10,000 life, that's half your life, you're still at more life than any other ruler has ever had in the game. And you've just drawn, what would that be, 20 cards. So that's primarily the reason for Whisper. I understand it. It's also due to the fact that Typhon has ways to reset his life via Typhon's Heart, things like that. Lumias as well, if you were to play them after Whispers and things like that. And Whisper isn't a pay as cost, it's a pay on resolution of the card, so it's not like you can just lose the life and then have it countered. You only lose the life if the card fully resolves, which means you're drawing however many cards. So, I understand why it had to go. Again, it would have been interesting to kind of maybe see it. 2 mana quick cast, draw 20. It's probably a little too much, even in like a 200 card deck. But I understand why it is on there. Rewriting Laws, Melfi. Rewriting Laws and Melfi is interesting. I think they just wanted to get rid of 2 cards that feel almost identically similar, with very niche differences, like one being a chant and one being... One's a chant, one's a resonator, one's quick cast, one isn't. Otherwise, they almost do practically the same thing. So I think they just lowered the count of like 0 mana cards to make sure that your deck was... you could still have some form of inconsistency within your deck. Because we saw, like with a lot of the combo decks, right? Loki enters the Game of Gods, Rewriting Laws, Melfi, Sudden Manifestation of Power, which, spoiler, is one of the ban cards. Like things like that. That were effectively 0 mana, but would shuffle through your deck and go to like a chant count, things like that, in order to like produce combo type effects and things. So I understand it, I get it. They just lowered that count of stuff, which is fine. Excalibur the God Sword, Ayu. This is one of the hits to lower the turn count on certain OTK decks. So like this one specifically is purely for like the Alice Order deck. You could play Excalibur, pitch an Excalibur, order an Ayu from your hand. You get your 2 free Light Will, your Regalia, things like that. You now have 2 Regalia in play. You can filter one of the Light Wills into Ayu to draw another card, play a bunch of more Regalia, so on and so forth, right? So, and then like kind of OTK your opponent from there. It just generated too much advantage for doing practically nothing. You're already playing the God Swords anyway. I don't know why you wouldn't. Like the whole deck was Light Will and it's a Regalia, which you want Regalia in that deck. So I'm not too bent out of shape about it. I kind of understand it. It's just, again, to lower the turn count on these like potential OTKs, so you're not cheating in will, cheating in these cards that are 1 mana, kill your opponent after some setup, right? It just lowers the setup potential. Lorite Persephone, and then I'm also going to go over number 6 in the same kind of vein, Ferris Spell and Setting the Stage. Very interesting that they hit these as like a combination band. The theory behind them is actually pretty interesting. Ferris Spell, we'll talk about Ferris Spell and Setting the Stage first. So Ferris Spell, Setting the Stage protects all your stuff from any form of interaction, so it's typically better for combo decks. But if you look at like Ferris Spell, being able to cancel things at quick cast for 1, it's a very tempo heavy card because it plays 1 for 1 and it plays mana neutral pretty much all the time, and most of the time mana up if your opponent's playing, you know, higher CMC cards. So it's a very powerful tempo card. Setting the Stage is a very powerful combo card. So it's interesting that they kind of made that where it's like, okay, you play one in your combo deck but not the other, because Ferris Spell and Setting the Stage would also be good in like the other decks. Like you could Ferris Spell more for combo decks than Setting the Stage for tempo decks. But like Ferris Spell, right? Like I play my Setting the Stage and then you try and cancel it with one of your cancel spells. And then I Ferris Spell your cancel spell because it's just mana neutral at the least. So that's more than likely why it got hit, particularly because of that kind of like interaction where the Setting the Stage in combo decks and having Ferris Spell as backup to protect it was a lot more powerful than they like wanted it to be, but they didn't want to necessarily ban Setting the Stage for combo decks, just to have it in as, I guess, the most OP Veil of Summer I've ever seen. And then Lorite Persephone. This one's kind of interesting. 1, Persephone is tails. So if you're playing Persephone, you already lock yourself out of villains. 2, if you play Persephone, you have very limited access to stifle effects, so cancel automatic or activate abilities for J-Rulers, as well as like additions, basically cards that aren't resonators. And so we've had a lot of like enter effects like the new 12 Olympians, like the reveal from outside the game, triggers, like things like that with the new set, in addition to just order existing as a mechanic that like take for example like Persephone. So Persephone, if you're unfamiliar, she has a discard, she has a bunch of effects, but the main one that makes her similar to Lorite or equatable to Lorite is you pitch her from your hand, return a spell to hand. So she always plays value down, because when you return the spell, you go a card to grave, your opponent gets a card back to their hand, right? That's so a lot of the time you're just trying to play mana positive with Persephone, because playing mana neutral just means you play value down, so you're technically down in like advantage if you just put everything to numbers. If you're playing Persephone, you're probably going to be very bad against order, because I just get to order whatever I want for free. Your Persephone is not going to be able to target it, doesn't really matter, and whatnot. If you're playing against not order, Persephone gets a lot better, because I can bounce things, whatever you're trying to do, right? Lorite, Lorite allows you to play villains if you need to, right? Because Persephone's tails. And then Lorite also hits any kind of automatic or activate effect, which the only other ones like that in the game that I can think of that hits all both of those for anything would be Rigveda, which is 3 mana unless you're Shiva, and then Pointy Hat Witch, which is under Seal 4. And most people don't main it. A lot of people just sideboard Pointy Hat Witch. So a lot of the time, Lorite's like your best option for a Stifle type effect, and with Stifles being a lot more powerful against Order specifically, and with Order decks being like the most recent thing released, a lot more powerful than potentially the older decks, and with the new ban list, I think Lorite becomes a lot more powerful, and that means your opponent's not going to be playing Persephone, which means they're not going to have a heavy like mana tempo play. So very interesting hits there. Null Magic Stone, Zhu Liang. Zhu Liang has, if you would take damage during your turn, you gain a red will. Null Magic Stone has take 200 damage, gain a red will. So Null Magic Stone just taps for 2 red will if you have Zhu Liang out. And because of how Zhu Liang is worded, as well as how Null Magic Stone is worded, Zhu Liang, I believe, is the first case of an automatic will ability like that could exist. Because in order for a will ability, an automatic ability to be a will ability, it has to activate off of you producing will, and have that will ability, like, and have that ability also be a will ability. I think at the very least it has to proc off of you producing will, which very few things do. A lot of the time it's just a replacement effect. So that was an interesting thing with that. But yeah, the main thing, like, I go second and I'm Dragonflame or whatever ruler. I play Zhuge Liang with Energize, get my Null Magic Stone, tap my Null Magic Stone, gain 2 red will. And then that just keeps going, right? So like if I called a Null Magic Stone the second turn and I had a Zhuge Liang, then I would suddenly have 4 will. 4 red will, right? But like that kind of idea. Like you were just getting so much free will for doing practically nothing that it was probably going to be a little too powerful. Kind of sad we didn't get to play with this one. I think it might have been interesting, but again, this falls into the case of them wanting to slow the game down. Makaria Final Stance. This is purely for the, like, you Rhea to dump Final Stance, then you use like Brunhild, something like that, in order to resurrect the Final Stance, in order to get an extra turn. I think it's just because they slowed the game down, so extra turn cards become a lot more impactful. Then, I mean, if you're killing your opponent on turn 1 or 2, right, they can't really set up and then res the Final Stance. It's just not really conducive to like a winning strategy. So I think they did that as a result of them slowing the game down. They're like, okay, this is too powerful in the idea that all these other strategies are getting hit, so we're just going to hit it as well. Ragnarok and Windsurfing. Ragnarok's never really put up numbers. I think the best Ragnarok has done recently was, I believe, Minha got top 8 at like a Converging Wills event or something with it, and Min is known to be a very prominent it loves Ragnarok, is like the main guy who plays Ragnarok. I know there was a top 16 at the American GP, I believe, of Ragnarok in April. But so it's same kind of concept as like the other things. They just nuked producing free extra will by practically doing nothing. Ragnarok was singleton, so you're only allowed to really play 1, but there might have been a way to loop it, things like that, with like Adam Brawley Rezard. And they just wanted to kind of cut down on overall combos. All right. Wellsir Priscia. I think this is just a result of them trying to slow the game down, that they hit this just as they did. With that, it slows Wellsir down for Wellsir to not really be... I mean, they hit a lot of other stuff to slow Wellsir down, but it prevents him from like having free like scries to kind of peek at the deck and work as like a quasi-control deck, sort of. So I mean, I don't think this one was necessary, but maybe. I mean, we haven't seen Priscia in a bit, and funny video will come out. No one really bothered to look at this when the cards came out, but it appears we were playing Priscia wrong the whole time. So it's partially on us. But anyway, 10, 11, and 12, 3 different tag combination bands. I don't get why these are here. Wish they would have just banned Mylist and Mujdart. This one I don't think was a problem. Maybe it was. Maybe just starting at 7k life with 6 cards in hand was like too good. Maybe they thought because they slowed the format down, like this would just be a lot better. Not really sure. But like, I mean, they put 2 combination bans on Mylist and 2 combination bans on Mujdart. Feith Sing is already banned, which means like Mujdart and Mylist only have 2 possible combinations now, and one of those is with 0, which no one has ever played. I think I've maybe seen like 1 or 2 decks with the 0/6 Age in it. And I mean, they never like topped or anything like that, so they weren't putting up like notable results. So I mean, I feel like you should, at this point, you should have just been like, all right, Mylist and Mujdart are banned. It would have been a lot easier than doing these like unnecessary, like you just take out 3 of these and just ban 2 cards. So people are like, okay, I just don't play Mujdart, I just don't play Mylist. Maria Bella, Sincere Engineer, Heart to Heart Talk, and Violet. This was a pretty big hit for Violet. I think more than the other one that's 2 down. This is another thing about this list that I just want to point out. Like, it feels formatted very weird. Like, there's a Typhon hit up here, and then 2 more Typhon hits down here, and then there's, like, an Alice hit down here, and then another Alice hit all the way up here. And there's, like, the cancel spell thing, and then another cancel spell thing, spaced out one. And then there's, like, the 3 tag ones, and then there's a Violet one, and then you skip a line, and then there's another Violet one. I don't know, whatever. But anyway, Heart to Heart Talk and Violet Atomic Automaton, that's a pretty big hit. It makes Eternal Wind a lot worse in Violet, because it just plays for 0. It means that Violet has to put mana into her effect in order to use it every turn. A lot of Violet turns, though, were pretty much pass. Like, you were like Callstone pass, and you just activated her effect anyway, without, like, the Heart to Heart Talk because of Garyon, things like that. But it does slow down the deck quite a bit. And the fact that Maria Bella, you could play it from the RFG in Violet to get Tiny Violets, improved healing robots, like things like that. Like, it was getting cards that were pretty prevalent to the strategy of the deck. And now it's just kind of hit. Heart to Heart Talk. We do have, like, sort of spoilers for these new rulers that we've seen. This might just still be too good for, like, the activate effect thing, but Heart to Heart Talk still has playability in other rulers, like the Demonic World Wolfgang, like Val 2, Machina, like things like that, like things where you pay Void on, like, a ruler side in order to get effects. You can still kind of use Heart to Heart Talk as, like, a accelerator in those decks. So it still has, like, some playability in the addition of being a machine. Machines got so good this new set. It's an unfortunate hit for Violet. It makes the deck fare a lot weaker. And you can't really accelerate as fast as you were doing previously, right? Because, like, if you want to activate the Violet effects on, like, both players' turns, now you would have to pitch an Eternal Wind on your turn. If you did that, and then you would, like, you could pitch, like, something else on your opponent's turn and, like, call a stone, but then both of those stones are going to be used into pitching unless you pitch more Eternal Winds. So, like, your Eternal Winds allow you to use it 2 turns in a row, as opposed to using it to, like, ramp will. So just interesting things like that. Excalibur Genesis, Shining Heart. I think this is fine. So, like, okay, the one deck I own is Excalibur Genesis. So, like, this hit my only deck that I have. But I do think this is fine, purely because I think it follows their philosophy that they're mainly going for this list. There are some other things that they hit that are different from the philosophy, but, I mean, the grand scheme was just slowing the game down. And so, like, this deck particularly, this whole Shining Heart thing right here, it's pretty consistent to kill your opponent on turn 2. Like, no, this isn't even, like, bias or anything like that. Like, you could pretty consistently get a Shining Heart into play on turn 2 and then flip Excalibur Genesis and kill your opponent. With the whole idea of, like, slowing stuff down, right, and, like, making it so you can't really OTK until turn 3, which is what a lot of these things are, without, like, setup and stuff like that. I think this is, like, fine conceptually to go with that, like, to go along with it. Was anybody playing this deck? Not really. It wasn't really, like, putting up results or anything like that. But again, it suits the, like, the thought process behind this list and what it's supposed to hit. So it's whatever. I'm fine with, like, the idea behind it. I mean, maybe the combination can go away with, like, the next list or something like that if it's proven that it's fine, but, like, sure, whatever. Atomic Bahamut, Atomic Turbulence. Okay, this is the second Violet hit, and this one is pretty impactful for a couple reasons. One, Atomic Turbulence, I've talked about how I hate Law of Silence effects, and I want them all banned ever, for always. So, like, I wish Atomic Turbulence and Dance of Spirits were just banned. So in that case, the Law of Silence effect is still there, but you just can't play a 40/40 OTK menace off the back of it. And part of the other thing that Turbulence did, which kind of pushed Violet like over the top, is like, say you're on 2 mana, you've heart-to-heart talked on 1, it wasn't canceled, you violeted effect twice, right? And now it's your turn and you have 2 will. You Atomic Turbulence, you dump 3 differently named atoms from the 2 you've dumped off of Violet's effect already. And now your opponent either has to cancel this, otherwise they just can't play cards for the rest of the turn. And if they do, then you have the 5 atoms in grave to Atomic Bahamut for the other red will that you probably have, or that you should have. And so it's stuff like that where it's like, because it dumped atoms to your grave in such an efficient fashion and was a Law of Silence effect, that also, it was basically like, you have to answer this or you die, followed by, oh, you still answered it, I'm still going to kill you, type deal. Really pushed Violet like over the edge in terms of just how consistent she was at killing and how kind of safe it was for just the Violet player. In addition to the fact that you just burned your opponent for 1,000 with this card anyway. So this combination ban significantly slows the deck down, in addition to the fact that you can't play Heart-to-Heart Talk in the deck anymore. Like, you're not able to really Atomic Bahamut until, I guess if you're playing Atomic Fusion and you get the red will, you could do it on turn 2, but because Atomic Fusion is 2 will, it sinks their whole turn into playing Atomic Fusion. And because it's additional cost to discard the atoms, they'll still be able to potentially Bahamut on the next turn, but they won't have any extra will since it's not a singular mana. The other thing, because Atomic Fusion is not quick cast, they have to do it in their main step, so they can't like hold will and then Atomic Turbulence in there before their untap, and then just have all this extra will in addition to having forced you to try and answer this card at the start of their turn. So it really slows down the OTK potential of the deck, and it kind of opens up like Violet like control decks, Violet burn decks, where like you don't play Bahamut but you're still playing Turbulence, and like other things like that. And one of the decks we actually have planned for, or I have planned for like a Wanderer Wednesday, is a Violet like machines list. So look forward to that. A Stem of Belial. I don't necessarily agree with this. A Stem of Belial was probably the best field control deck in the format, but a Stem of Belial didn't have access to like Lorite, right? Like, it didn't really have access to 5-color stones, because you're already playing Aerothropias for the God's Art resets. You're playing Autoroctia's Memoria, which would put you into red, black, white, and then you had like 4 other stones, which were typically mixtures of like Heaven's Rift and Scorched Bales. Just because of like how the deck functioned, it was just really hard for you to get green. Sure, you could play Black Silences or other things like that, but you also wanted like a lot of Light Will and like other things like that. So just having green wasn't really effective, or at least like something you wanted to do necessarily. And this deck was pretty bad at killing because of a stemma, right? It's like you'd have to swap out for Satan and things like that. And I mean, that's fairly inefficient in terms of like Lorite's counterspells, like other stuff, right? It's like you'd have to blank your Stemma and then somehow kill your opponent. Like you would have to have a Belial active, your Stemma blanked, and then Inferno if you're trying to do Inferno combo, which means you would have to use your Belial's God's Art. Like there's just so much stuff that prevented this deck from really like killing. It was just a very strong control deck, and probably the best control deck, but well, second best control deck. They also hit, I'm gonna skip ahead, they hit Kaguya, which a Stem of Belial was really good into. It's very good into order, this deck in general. And so because they kind of slowed all the other decks down, I think they were just kind of afraid of like the best field control deck just being absolutely bonkers, right? But the thing with the field control deck is this deck wasn't turboing you out, and due to the fact that since it wasn't really turboing you out, its slower game plan And the fact that the format slowed down a lot means other slow decks can come into the format, which it might just be really bad against other slower decks, right? So like typically control decks, if a deck is a control deck and it plays against another control deck, typically if one has like a super high like top end, it can be pretty difficult for the deck with the lower top end to deal with it. So you kind of it kind of alternates who's the control deck depending on who has like the higher top end. So like because you can have these slower decks in the format, I don't think this was necessary. I did really like Asema Belial, just like as a deck. It reminded me of Mardu Pyromancer, very fun field controls type thing that we didn't really have. Again, since the format's slowing down, it might open up other like field control things like Violet with like heavy dark prominences, things like that. We'll see. I don't think this one was necessary. I think Asema Belial was a case of it was one of the performing decks and they hit everything else, so they just hit this as a result. But I don't think this deck was powerful enough in the overall field of things, even though it was able to keep up, that it needed to be hit, if that makes sense. So I don't agree with this one, but that's just me. Castle of Beatrice, Spirit of Decay. So Spirit of Decay is new. It's like if you have X amount of cards in your grave, it gains counters, and you can remove counters to make your opponent lose life. Castle of Beatrice, I think you just like add it back to your hand or things like that. Not actually sure why this one's on here. I guess it's just like, I don't know, you can keep adding the Spirit of Decay back or something. I don't think there's an infinite with this. I think it's just like really good in like the long game. I'm not particularly sure. Maybe there was something that Athenia was doing when the people who make the list were like playtesting cards, and they were like, oh, it can just get Castle and Spirit really easily and then just kind of like burn your opponent out or like life loss them out. But in like the same vein with like Typhon coming out and like other things like that, it's like is this really necessary? So this is another one that like I'd rather like see it played out rather than like you just like hit it. It just seems so weird. No one was talking about it in like the first place, and it just seems like, I don't know, just like a really good like control value like win con type deal. But like if you're that late in the game anyway, like both players might have something to like answer Castle or like other things like that, right? So, whatever. Phantasmal Ascendant and Red Wine and Bread. So these two, 18 and 19, were both Nyarlathotep hits. Very funny that Nyarlathotep never really did great. I think it top 8'd once or twice. I believe it won the Mexico GP, and then it like never went into top 4 like ever again. But its cards were played in other decks that were winning events and causing problems, so here we are. Phantasmal Ascendant, Red Wine and Bread. That's an interesting one. I think they just wanted to lower the count of how many like free stones you could get, I guess. Maybe for like stuff with like Gruz Ballista and things like that. But I don't know, maybe like Almerius Gruz decks would be doing stuff with it. I don't know, one's quick cast, one isn't. This one gives, I don't know, stats. This one is quick cast, I guess. Like, I don't really know. I don't really know what to say about this one other than they just kind of cost 0 mana, so they're just lowering the amount of 0 mana cards, would be my guess. Or just lowering the amount of like stone ramp you can have for resonance triggers off of like Isis, right? So I mean, if you like look at all these bans that they've done, because they also banned Sun and Manifestation of Power, if you're playing Isis, you only have 1 stone ramp effect within the Nyarlathotep cards. So like they neutered the absolute shit out of Isis and things like that. Again, lowering the count of like OTK type deals. Magic Stone Dance of Chaos is just the best card into Isis. It was 1 mana, would give you 3 mana as well as draw you 3 cards. So pretty good. I mean, that's really all the reason for that, I think. I think they just wanted to lower the amount of like free stone ramp that Isis had access to, and then this is the 4 like way they decided to do it. I don't think 18 is necessary, but maybe. Hanzo and Kaguya. I mean, like, I guess you can now play Hanzo in, like, other decks, but I don't know. I feel like they should have just banned Hanzo, because it's like you weren't really playing it in any deck other than Kaguya. I think this ban right here, or this combination ban, is the most ridiculous thing ever when you should have just banned Hanzo. I mean, like, because I can play Hanzo in, what, my Nyarlathotep deck? Like, what am I playing green in? For, like, order. Like, Tails order. Machina? But, like, I'd rather be ordering other things in Machina. And, like, none of them are inherently playing moons, or, like, trying to do stuff with moons outside of Kaguya, regardless of the fact that she just, like, gives you a free one. So it's like, I don't think anybody's gonna be like, oh yeah, let me get out my frickin', I don't know, Athenia Hanzo deck. I don't know, maybe. But, I just don't think this combination ban was necessary. I feel like you just throw Hanzo on the ban list and you're just like, ship it, it's good. Like, only Kaguya players are playing it, so. What does this do to Kaguya? A lot. Hanzo was kind of egregious in, like, what it did. It was by far Kaguya's best card, and it puts Kaguya in a really awkward spot where she doesn't have any form of mana ramp. So she just becomes this power, like, I don't want to say powerful, but more like dirtily control cancel deck. But cancel decks aren't that great, right? Because of order, things like that. So I mean, she has probably the easiest way to ramp out, like, Feastings in order to make Feasting have a larger X value. But outside of that, she's not really doing a whole lot anymore. So she'll probably, like, fall off. Like, honestly, I would, like, if I was updating my tier list in the same video, I would probably move Kaguya from, like, S tier to, like, C tier. Like, she just got, like, this one card pushed that deck over the top so much. So it being gone really just lowers the value of the deck, because this was both the engine and the win con. So, okay, moving on. Alice, Tales of Creation, Tales of Fantasia. Sure. I think they just didn't like what Tails was doing, and the fact that they, like, left IU in. So I think they were kind of afraid of people just going, like, oh yeah, Regalia, Regalia, Regalia. Like, energize, order IU, light, X off of the Regalia, and then, like, Call a Stone, and then 3 into Tales of Fantasia, right? And then you, like, loop Tails into to take extra turn cards. Like, things like that. I think they just thought the ceiling might have been too powerful. Which, I mean, fair enough, I guess. I think there are a lot, especially after they, like, you know, kind of hit this, right? So, like, I get it. It's just, like, I think Tails is very much a, like, combo in the case of if it resolves, you win the game, pretty much, in Alice. At least I think you should. Especially if you, like, combo Tails into Tails into Tails into Tails, right? So, and with, like, the induction of Regalia Beast in the new set, I think this version gets better. So I think they just, like, preemptively hit it because they didn't want, like, extra turn Final Stance. Frickin', well, I mean, I guess you wouldn't play Final Stance. It would just be Alice's Worlds. But so, like, Alice World type deals. Which, sure, fine. Alright. The most controversial one on this list from people I've talked to, because they have no idea why it's on this list. I'm going to give my reasoning for why I think it's on this list. So, if I go second, and I'm Machina, which Machina has not put up results. Yes, I get it. But again, format's slowing down. Machina's kind of like a combo deck. It can potentially get there. I play Guinevere off of Energize with Machina. Or even going into, like, turn 2, turn 3, I just order Guinevere. You cannot do anything to me, because you'll have to pay 3 more in order to do it. And because decks aren't getting free will, you will not have 3 will within the first couple of turns in order to play a card and also pay the value that is required from Guinevere to stop me. Which means you can no longer do shit on my turn. So, I order Guinevere, it's uncancelable, you can't deal with it, and then it hits the field and I'm untouchable, right? Now, I reveal the top card of my deck, and it's a machine. We got a bunch of new machines, right? But we could also play old ones. So odds are we hit a machine in some variety. Hit a machine, I get a stone, whether from ordering, like calling a stone after order, or just whatever, right? And then I pay one will, the one blue will that I've now called after ordering, in order to play Unity of the Machine Knights, targeting my Guinevere, which is now a machine because of Machina, as well as the other machine that I flipped off the top of my deck with Guinevere's effect. Now, my Guinevere is a 12/12. My other machine is whatever. And they both have, in addition to the addition that you have played, Unity of the Machine Knights, they all have Eternal and Barrier. So, when you move to your opponent's turn, they are free to do stuff, but they can't Black Moonray, they can't Black Moonbeam, they can't Gradius, they can't do anything. They can't target your Guinevere. And even if they do something like Final Battle, that still doesn't kill it, because it has Eternal as well. Which means you kind of get this thing where, excuse me, where I can play a Guinevere at pretty much any point in the game, as long as I can order it. And then it'll resolve. You won't be able to do anything to me because it's ordered. And then I'll be able to make it practically unkillable on your turn, which means you have to kind of kill me. Otherwise, when I go into my turn, I get a bunch of mana to do whatever I want, and you can't do anything about it because of Guinevere's activated or continuous effect. That is why I think it's there. The only real way to get rid of, like, deal with that is to play, like, something like a Tenon of Asmodeus. I don't remember if Unity of the Machine Knights says both cards have to be in play for the Eternal Barrier to apply, or if it just needs both cards in play, or all three cards in play in order to actually activate. I'd have to check. But if it only needed the one, or like if it needed all three, you could also use cards like Suya, like non-targeting banish effects, in order to get rid of the other Resonator. But like I think that is why this is on here. That is the only reason I can think this is on here, is because when you play Guinevere, it won't be interactable at all when you play it. You get a machine into play for free or whatever, and then you get to play Unity of the Machine Knights for the stone you call off of Guinevere being ordered. And then it's just unkillable on your opponent's turn unless they have very specific cards. Also because it's a J ruler, right? So like it can't be banished effectively. I think that's why that's there. That's like my best guess I got. Would this have really mattered? Maybe. Maybe. Yeah, but we won't know. 23. Echidna and Typhon's Wave of Terror. This is Waver of Terror. This is the one thing on here from the new set that I agree with had to be on here. So if you're unfamiliar, Typhon's Wave of Terror is when this card is revealed, if you're Typhon, from outside of the game, your opponent discards X cards, where X is the number of Typhon's Wave of Terrors you have in all public zones or revealed from outside of the game. Echidna has Revolution, reveal two cards from outside, two machines from outside of the game, which Typhon's Wave of Terror is a machine. And then Typhon, when you order Typhon, so Order of Infinity, you reveal a card from outside of the game. So what would happen is if you went second, you would do the like turn 0 stuff that we've seen with like turn 0 Loki, like things like that, but where Loki kind of has an investment in the fact that you're like, you know, playing Game of Gods, playing Shahrazad, like things like that. This was, all you had to do was play Echidna. You just needed to open an Echidna, which if you put it into a hypergeometric calculator, there's a 34% chance of you opening at least one Echidna if you do like a full mull and a 100 card Typhon deck. So 34% chance, and what it was a 34% chance for was this would be in your opponent's draw phase on the very first turn of the game. They're going first. They can't even call a stone, right? You order Echidna, reveal two Typhon's Wave of Terrors. Order of Infinity will reveal a third Typhon Wave of Terror. and then they discard 7 cards, which is their whole hand. And they don't get a draw on the first turn. So, before your opponent has even had a chance to play, you discarded their entire hand. That was the Echidna thing with Typhon's Wave of Terror. Very not fun, right? You're basically saying that every 1 in 3 games I play against a Typhon, effectively, I'm just going, and they go second, I'm just not going to start with a hand. Which I don't think is very fun. So this one I agree with. Even though it was new, I 100% agree with this having to go beforehand. Themis and Typhon. I don't agree with this one. While I think this one is super powerful, there are a couple things for it. One, so Themis has, you can pay 500 or 1,000 life when you play Themis to pay 1 less to play Themis. She costs 4, black and 3. She has Revolution. Your opponent loses X hundred life, where X is the amount of life you have lost this turn, right? So you having 20,000 life, right? If you before your untap, Whisper from the Abyss, take 10,000, draw 20 cards. If you're playing like a 200 card Typhon deck, odds are you draw into a Themis. Same idea if you do like 5,000, draw 10 cards in like a 100 card deck because you're trying to hit Echidnas. Draw into a Themis, order the Themis by paying another 1,000. You're at 4,000 life, and then your opponent takes 6,000. 6,000 in loss of life, so not even Belial stops it. Like they would just die when the God's Art runs out. So, I get it. I understand why I think they put this on here. However, they already did this combination ban. And as far as I'm aware, the only other pay X life type effect in Darkness is Final Battle. Which means I would have to Final Battle and then play Themis in order to kind of like OTK kill you. Plus, because you're Darkness, they don't really have a good way of, like, they don't have Lorite, right? Because Typhon only allows you to play Darkness cards. And it's villains, so, like, you can't even play Persephone. So, like, they don't have Lorite. They can't play Setting the Stage. They can't play Ferris Spell. They can play Necronomicon Barrier. So, I mean, I guess they could stop your Lorites. But, like, you're kind of getting to, like, play for free, if that makes sense. Darkness doesn't really have a whole lot of, like, you can't, like, on the chase interaction type deals. They have, like, field interaction and then, like, kind of, like, field blanket effects. So, I don't think this one was necessary. I think this was a case of they were, like, afraid of it and then, like, over-adjusted even after they banned them. I mean, ordering Themis, right, on, like, 2... You reveal something, you lose 1,000 life by paying 1,000 for Themis, and then your opponent just takes 1,000. There are a lot more powerful cards than pay 2, take 1,000. The other thing with Themis, I guess, is the cards in your opponent's deck lose all races. Really shits on Zeus, particularly. Also, really affects, like, machines, which kind of got updated. Like, with this. So, I mean, like, Themis is really powerful. Like, don't get me wrong. But I think it was an over-adjustment. I don't think this one was necessary immediately. I think this was, like, a wait-and-see type deal. And if Typhon's, like, shitting on everybody and Themis is the reason for, like, 90% of the win rate, sure, get rid of it. But I mean, this was like a case of like, oh wow, this card's really cool, and I'm just not probably going to play this in like any other deck. Maybe I will. Maybe you play it in like Loki or something, like Loki control, but it's just like significantly worse, right? Okay, and then the ban list. Magical Dragon, it's just Draco Witch, I guess, was the name that the deck got like named. Again, they just got rid of a lot of like 0 mana cards. just like free cards. So I mean, Magical Dragon and Lycaon are the only two cards that have ever had like a storm effect in the game, and they're both banned. So that'll teach you a force of will. Virgilius getting banned really lowers the power level of Dante Belial. Kind of means that deck has to full in on the Inferno combo, which means it's a lot more susceptible to like counter magic and things like that. You don't really necessarily need to have like field control. This also would have affected a Stemma Belial, because they can't really like effectively kill their Belial or a Stemma in order to get to like Satan, right? It's like your opponent would have had to deal with it, and like I mean, let's be honest, Belial on its flip side isn't really that scary. And then Sun of Manifestation of Power. I mean, we have seen what the top lists have been doing with Sudden Manifestation of Power. 0 mana, like Mylest, right? Mylest, Gruz Ballesta decks, stuff like that. They've been playing these free will, get a free stone, you use Gruz Ballesta, sack it off, you ramp effectively. You use this as like a 0 mana card for Magical Dragon stuff, for Isis, right? Like we've seen what this card has been doing, and I think hitting it is correct. I think it's the most powerful of all of these other ones, especially in the sense that it replaces itself, where none of the other ones do inherently. They need other cards in order to do that. So I think it's just like a 0 mana sorcery speed card that was in a very pushed color for that like idea and like archetype and stuff like that. So I think it's fine that they hit this in order to stop like any weird stuff, right? Like if you're playing like I mean, even just like Welser, right? Like I played Sudden Manifestation of Power and Welser, I'm suddenly at 2 mana. So like things like that, it still works as like a mana ramp in certain decks. So I think it going is fine, especially because they did these 3 combination bans instead of just outright banning Mylest. So if you play like Mylest Almarius or Mylest 0, which I mean we've seen before, like you can't 1 mana Sudden Manifestation. You'd either have to Phantasmal Ascendant or Red Wine and Bread. But yeah, so that is the whole list. Thoughts overall, I think this list is fine. I think the idea of what they're doing, combination bans, is fine. While it is annoying, right, to think about, oh, I can't play X with Y, etc., etc., I think like the idea to allow you to still play these cards without outright banning them. One of the main examples, I think, being Heart to Heart Talk is one of the more splashable things, in addition to like Lorite, Ferris Spell, stuff like that, and like play these cards in like other decks in order for them to get like still have like some sort of value without outright banning them. They're just a little too powerful with certain other combinations. But I think the overall idea is fine, and I think this list overall was fairly impactful. I think it shows that they want to move away from this high speed, like free will type deal, and push the game back into a thing of like, okay, well, if you're a combo deck or like OTK deck, you're not doing that until turn 3, maybe turn 2 if you get lucky and your opponent like literally is doing nothing. But like you're not doing that turn 2. People can play to kind of like set up like things like that, so that the game has like a much more like resource based feel to it, as opposed to what it has in the past. Decks that are potentially really powerful coming out of this list because everything else got shit on. Zeus didn't really get touched at all. The one main one would be not being able to play Lorite because you're playing Persephone. That would be like the biggest Zeus touch, I think. I don't think it played setting the stage. Maybe it did, but I don't think it did. So, I mean, it's just playing Ferris Spell anyway, and then I don't think any of these other hits affect Zeus at all. So, I mean, Zeus just kind of has a bunch of shit. So, I mean, good on it. The other thing with Zeus would be it just has like the most consistent will base because of its stone. So it just gets to play like 4 Moonshade, 4 the 1, and then like 2 Ataroctia's Memoria because it's 5 color. So even if you order something, you're not like, you have 8 other 5 color stones, right? So like Zeus is just 5 color, like new 12 Olympian good stuff. So Zeus is probably super powerful, just like coming out of this. Typhon is still probably pretty powerful. Like, that deck does some really... Unfortunately, I hate that this deck is actually kind of fun to play and, like, watch. And just it's annoying. But I think the deck is interesting. And then Athenia is actually kind of good, because it has, like, an infinite loop type deal at 3 will. You need, like, a few things set up, but you can do it at 3 will. But it technically wins you the game automatically, but not really. So those 3 decks are interesting. Dragonflame, like, I didn't think Dragonflame would be good at all if this ban list didn't come out with as much shit as it has on it, in addition to the actual bans. I still don't think Dragonflame would be that good, but because the game slowed down a bunch, I think you can get Dragon Power at a pretty decent pace that you might just be able to get enough that the deck is kind of cool. So I'm actually looking forward to all 4 of the decks, like the deck profiles, and actually building them for myself. And then, but other than that, I think they did a decent job for the first one. Again, there's some that I don't agree with, but for the most part, I think this list is fine. We've kind of all talked about. I've talked about it, all my thoughts on it already, but I won't keep rambling on and on. So that'll be the end for this video. I posted on my Twitter what I kind of have planned for the rest of the week. I might also do a video on Friday as well. I was just waiting to see if I had anything going on this Friday, which I don't believe I do. So tomorrow, Tuesday, the next Tuesday going forward for the next month, will be each of the decks. Tomorrow's going to be Zeus, next week will be Typhon, week after will be Athenia, and then finally will be Dragonflame. Those will be releasing on Tuesday. Wander Wednesdays will still be coming out. All of the new decks are going to be built for Wander. Not really interested in New Frontiers since no events are going to be New Frontiers before August, where they're just completely wiping it off the map. So all the content on here will be Wanderer based, if you weren't aware already. So do keep that in mind. And then Thursday, I will have my full set review for the set. And then Friday, if I do end up making the video, will be my top 10 for Game of Gods Revolution. But anyway, thank you again so much for watching. Hope you all have a great rest of your day and look forward to more content coming throughout the rest of the week and the rest of the month. Bye-bye.